You're listening to Crushing Classical, How to Thrive in Your Creative Career. I'm your host, Jennet Ingle, oboist, entrepreneur, author, and business and creative coach for musicians. Today on the podcast, you'll hear my interview with Dr. Heidi Begay, flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. She's so brilliant and passionate in her mission of supporting flutists holistically through her Flute 360 podcast, and I know you will love hearing her story. I hope you enjoy this episode. You know, what I'm thinking about right now, from the conversation that I just had, and you will soon hear with Dr. Heidi Begay, is about how to integrate all of the creative things that you do and all of the audiences that you serve together, and whether that's even a good idea. I feel like I've had two experiences recently that are opposing here. One was a conversation in Terry Terspicio's summer camp that I was attending about when you have a wildly divergent portfolio career, when you work with different groups of people, is it important that you have anywhere a menu of all of the different things that you offer and that you could do? So someone could, look at that menu and say, oh, I need support for my oboe articulation, or, oh, I need coaching to help me get my business off the ground, or, oh, I need to consult with someone on my creative project. Maybe not, right? More ideally, perhaps, someone comes to you for the thing that they know you do, and you serve them or don't serve them. But what I've found in my life is that the more I allow myself to integrate the various things that I do, the more I feel like I'm a full human being, a full artist, not just an oboist, and the better people respond on the whole. And I look specifically at when I started. I had a Facebook page for a long time, Jennet Ingle Oboist. It still exists. It's still sort of my main professional page on Facebook. But for a while, I was also doing a separate page that was about the tarot. And I built that slowly over 6 months or so, and then I sort of let it lapse. But it wasn't that I was done with the tarot. I love the tarot. It was that I was done with that page. And I started bringing little mini tarot readings into my other professional page, Jennet Ingle Oboist, and, letting them be the spark for a conversation about what I was working on with the oboe that week. And I was initially really shy about doing that because I feel like, tarot is in the woo realm, and the oboe was my actual profession. And, how dare I combine the two things? But the more I did it, the more confident I got about it. I got really good feedback from it. And at one point, I had someone over on my YouTube channel, which is distinct from that Facebook page, two different platforms, make a comment on one of my videos about oboe reads that referenced the tarot. And I was like, oh my goodness, somebody is following me across multiple platforms and sees this connection. And in fact, it ends up being a differentiator for me, right? I am the oboist who talks extensively about oboe pedagogy and about the oboe as a metaphor for life, and also uses and loves the tarot and talks about that. And, not every oboist is doing that. So it's a differentiator, and that was successful for me. And as we were talking about this with my guest, Heidi Begay, Dr. Heidi Begay, her own take seems to be that we that her Flute 360 is a way, her podcast, the Flute 360, is really a way of supporting flutists through everything that they need: their health, their organization, their actual flute playing, and their way of being in the world as a musician who is also in business. And that's amazing. It's amazing that the one platform that she's running there can sort of accommodate all of those things that are passions for her. And it made me think about how, in my mind, I really am separating out uh, some of my audiences from each other. On YouTube, I only talk about the very specific fine details of oboe reeds, and I guess occasionally some oboe playing tips and ideas. And in my read club, we talk about the oboe, right? We chat about lots of things while we're busy, but effectively that is a forum to talk about oboe reeds, period. In my Invincible Oboist program, yes, it's the oboe, and it's through the lens of how can we take the oboe and keep it from being a barrier to our music making, to our artistry, to our musicianship. But even though that's a broader topic, I still feel like I'm speaking to very specific people, partly because it's a small group program. So I'm literally speaking to the 6 people, the 10 people who are in the Zoom room with me. But as I promote it and as I bring it in, I feel like I have a very clear avatar in mind for the people that I anticipate will join me in that program. And meanwhile, as I run Crushing Classical, that feels a little bit different. And I don't necessarily know the audience here as well as I would like to. This is partly because I took over a podcast that was preformed and that had an audience already built up after 5 years of episodes that Tracy like beautifully recorded and put out. It's partly because I haven't done a lot of professional um, public speaking about my business and about music business and about businesses that people are running and about portfolio careers that musicians have. I am passionate about that, but I haven't done a lot of speaking about it. And so it's not always clear to me who I'm talking to and whether I am reaching out in the most helpful way to the people who are listening. So let me put this invitation to you. If you are listening to this, and if you hear this struggle that I'm sort of discussing here, would you help me out? Could we get on a call maybe? I think I'm going to put in the show notes a link to hop on my calendar, and I would just love to have a few deep dive conversations with a few people who have been listening to these episodes, who hopefully have been enjoying Crushing Classical. I would love to hear what you're hearing and what you're listening for, and how I can serve you better going forward. So please do check out this link in the show notes. I'm going to create that and pop it in, and make it open to the first 5 or 10 people who hop in, because I would love the opportunity to chat with you. And if I can be helpful in our chat, so much the better. But really, I would just like to hear what's going on for you and how you're enjoying what this is. Not a big obligation, just a little conversation. And I don't bite. Thank you so much for that. My guest today, Dr. Heidi K. Begay, is a self-employed flutist, educator, podcaster, and nonprofit organizer. Heidi is the creator and host of the Flute 360 podcast, which delivers educational content to modern-day flutists through various platforms. Since 2018, that podcast has produced over 210 episodes and has obtained 30 corporate sponsorships. Heidi's mission is to help musicians reach new heights so they can feel empowered, confident, and have a life they love on and off the stage. I loved speaking with her. She's absolutely a powerhouse. Her intention is true. Her heart is pure. She's really looking to help people to find ways to thrive in their careers. And that way that we have to create our own careers as musicians and as creatives in this modern age, like, it's different than what your teachers may have told you as you were going through school. It's different from what happened, even back when I was coming out of conservatory, and certainly the generation before that. She's here to help. Our conversation certainly helped me. I loved having it, and I hope you will enjoy this episode. If you spend more than a few minutes a month on billing and scheduling for your teaching studio, you might consider Fonz. It's an all-in-one platform to help service-based businesses, like music teachers. In fact, it was originally created by a music teacher to manage their clients and their billing without stress and hassle. It helps you to up-level your presence and show up to your clients and students as the professional you are. You can get a free 2-week trial with the link in the show notes. Dr. Heidi K. Begay, welcome to Crushing Classical. I'm so glad to get to talk with you.
Oh my goodness, you have no idea. I have been such a fan of this show for so long, and kudos to you for taking it over and running it so beautifully. But yes, good morning. Thank you for having me, and I am so pumped.
I am too. Honestly, the Heidi, the more I see of what you're doing, the more I feel like like we're on such similar tracks, right? Like serving instrumentalists in a really concrete and specific way with your podcast Flute 360. Like, it is designed, or it was initially designed, correct, as education for flutists specifically. And
Mm.
then, of course, you're expanding outward from that to talk about all areas of entrepreneurship, presumably to all musicians, not merely flute players. And I guess my initial question for you is, how do you think about balancing those two missions?
Ooh, very good question. They actually go hand in hand quite well. And as you know, and maybe as you know, as you're going through your business, you find this too, like, where should my focus be, right? But I try to integrate parts of my business with each other as best as I can. I am not perfect with this, but to kind of take a few steps back. So Flute 360 started actually as my doctoral thesis, and then it evolved organically into this love affair. I really love learning. Like we were talking about, pre-recording. I love learn. And then it was a CV builder. And then it became the marketing arm to my business. And literally, that was the most organic evolution I have ever witnessed. That was not me. I served it, I fed it, and I helped it shift, but it took a life of its own. So to go back to your original question, from that evolution, the entrepreneurial side started to evolve. And so different sectors of my business started to blossom naturally, like the Ultimate Music Business Summit that I do with Dr. Garrett Hope and Arthur Brewer, the Pivoting Musician, which is a digital class and a podcast with Dr. Garrett Hope. So you find yourself, you have this plan or this goal of, I'm going to be an academic flute professor at the collegiate level. That was the goal. And 4 years later, here I am being my own boss and being a musicpreneur. And that evolution and Flute 360 spiraled into UMBS, TPM, etc. So all of that is to say is, yes, I talk about entrepreneurship to my flutists, but I say, if you want to know more about this, come over here. So they feed off of each other. And then through UMBS and TPM, some flutists might find me through that avenue and those avenues, and then they kind of come into Flute 360.
So, Flute 360 then is it more than just a podcast? Is it like a little bit of a way of life for flutists? Can you talk a little bit about, like, as you began this journey and as you sort of began by speaking directly to flutists about the flute?
Yeah.
How does that prong of your life still play out, or where did that come from, and how is that functioning for you?
Yeah. No, great question. So Flute 360, we look at holistically the person as a whole, the artist, the human, and the business person. So we take this panoramic view of flute related topics that serves the modern day flutist. How does a
Mm.
flutist take care of themselves holistically through you know, medicine in the sense of food, sleep, rest, exercise. So I bring on experts in that regard. And then artistically, my goal and my vision to help flutists is to really help them thrive on and off the stage. So then, as the artist, how can we free up any knots or tension in the sense of like mental knots where they can really express themselves on the stage? And then off the stage, how are they thriving in their career? So that's how I serve flutists through that way. And that's the arm to my business that helps bring in the musicians that want to work with me through master classes, flute camps, lessons, me being a clinician. So that
Mhm.
traditional, even though, and a lot of people say, oh, you're a podcaster now, Heidi. So now you don't do the traditional or you don't have the traditional music jobs. Like, yeah, no, I still am a teacher. I still perform. I still
Mhm.
get to wear those traditional hats, but the podcast is maybe the new way of mixing things up where the podcast shines a light onto my business and shines a light onto those roles for people to find me, for me to find them, for us to work
Mhm.
together.
Yeah, absolutely. And the podcast, we've been talking about sort of the magic of podcasting in being able to reach people outside of your local space, being able to actually have conversations with people that you completely admire in the world of music and in the world of entrepreneurship. So that is fantastic stuff. Are there people in your life who actually have no idea that you do this, who are like, oh, there's Heidi sitting in the orchestra again? Like, oh, there's Heidi the flute player that I just know.
Good question. I have no idea. I think they know about 360 because I'm pretty annoying about it. I'm always talking about it through social media and in conversations because, again, it's a huge part of my life. Do you
Yeah.
resonate with that about your podcast? Like, hey, crushing classical, it's kind of your digital baby.
It is a little bit, and but I guess the questions I keep asking are because I'm fascinated by the way that you've managed to like sort of create an overarching container that contains all of you in a really beautiful way and is evolving along with you. And I keep asking because it's fascinating to me personally
Mm,
because I feel like I have 18 different ways that people can find me, right? There's my YouTube channel on making oboe reeds,
hmm,
and there's like actual me out in the world playing oboe recitals and playing in orchestras and doing oboe things. And
mm,
there's my blog that I share material about, and which is almost always like oboe as a metaphor for life in one way or another.
mm,
And then there's the podcast and the book, of course, and the podcast, which has come about more recently. And all of those things are absolutely authentic and true to me, but they don't seem to connect as organically as what
mm.
I'm seeing you doing.
That's very kind. Thank you for that observation. And I'm glad that you see that. It's not always easy,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I think one of my friends, Jason Heath,
Oh
he's been
yeah.
podcasting for many, many, many more years than me, and he has like 800 episodes, I think. It's insane. Do you know Jason
Mm-hmm.
Heath?
I sure do. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And we had a conversation through UMBS one year, and he said in the conversation about video production, he goes, I'm always thinking about my brand and branding and what does that mean and how people perceive me and my business. And I thought, oh, wow, he's eons above me and beyond me. And he's still thinking about this. So it's okay if I don't have all the answers right now. I will
Mm-hmm.
try to package it as best as I can. I'm a very organized person. I may not play the flute oh so well all the time. I may not be the best teacher, but I am organization queen. So I love packaging. That's innately who I am. And so I wonder, hearing your observations and the notes that you're making right now, I wonder if I'm organizing my brand in a way where I'm not even really I am putting thought into it, but I wonder how much of the natural organization characteristics of Heidi is coming through the packaging.
Yeah, because I think I mean, inevitably, anytime that you're showing up publicly, you're bringing yourself.
Mm,
It is probably not your information about flute vibrato or your specific information on like holistic health for flutes necessarily that keeps
mm,
people coming back. It's not the information, it's like the magic that is inherently you and is inherently everyone. So, if we could broaden this for a moment to
yeah.
musicians in general, who I think very often musicians feel very pigeonholed, almost in, and I guess I'm still sort of working my way out of those pigeonholes myself. But there's this idea that if you're going to be a serious musician, if you have musical integrity, what that means is that you're not doing anything else and you are not pursuing your other interests and you're certainly not talking publicly about your other interests. I'm not saying that that's a right thing. I'm saying that that is
Mm,
something that I've seen
mm,
um, people say and indicate. And the what's my point here? My point is that even the finest musicians who show up, they're showing up as a package. They're presenting a brand even if they don't intend to, because it is the magic of each person's unique personality and collection of character traits, and
yeah.
um, it is that magic that they're bringing to the table.
I'm so glad you brought it back to the listener. So if you're listening to this, we're talking about your brand. And what we're saying here is you're the niche. Like, I am completely different than another flutist, Jane. She
Hmm.
might have an interest in songwriting or playing the piano, and that's going to make her uniquely different than compared to my thumbprint. And who I am as a person cannot be replicated. We're all unique thumbprints. And I've said that or in other Flute to 360 episodes. So hopefully that resonates with you, the listener, and knowing what your thumbprint is and what you can bring to the table is going to be so uniquely different than Jane or Joe. And you need to be comfortable in your own skin to say, yes, I'm a classically trained flutist, but guess what? My secret in the closet right there is songwriting. You can pull that talent stack out, let it shine, because guess what? Joe may not have that talent stack. And that's what's going to make you different. So being comfortable in your own skin, recognizing your talents, recognizing what you can bring to the world and owning it. I think that is so essential to finding that niche, that brand, and being confident about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's in business, I believe we call that a differentiator. And you stated it a few minutes ago really clearly. You're like, well, maybe I'm not the best flutist, maybe I'm not the best podcaster, maybe I'm not the best at this or this or this, but what I am is organized. And
Yeah.
a previous guest that I had on here was like, yeah, I'm not the best pianist, I'm not the best composer, but I care more than anybody else. Like, it's just
Mm,
being able to put that into words is really magical and really important. And also, I think really can help with the feeling that with another feeling that I often hear from musicians about like sort of the world being a zero sum game for musicians. Like if I move to a new town and there's already a flute teacher teaching, there's no room for me. Um, if
yeah.
there's all right, if somebody is already talking, if somebody online is already talking about the oboe and how it's like cars, um, then my own viewpoint on that has no place. Somebody else
Mm,
has already done it. It's not a thing that I can do anymore. And like I'm sure that you don't believe that. I know I don't believe that, but it's being able to sort of tap into your differentiator or
yeah.
your unique combination of amazing factors.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And going back to, hey, I'm a new flute teacher in this new town. There's somebody already here. There's no room for me. Case in point, when I just moved to Dallas, I've been in
Hmm.
Fort Worth forever and I moved to Dallas recently. And if you have that mindset of lack, then you're not going to be fulfilled creatively or financially. I could have easily said, and I'm not perfect. This is just an example. I could have easily said, "Oh, there's other teachers here in Forney. There's not space here for me." Well, if I had that mentality, then I wouldn't have 5 amazing, amazing young women come to my door seeking out lessons from me. And
Right.
you never know until you ask. The worst that can happen is somebody says no to you. So you can put your feelers out to a band director or a school district, or put your post up on a Facebook mommy group and say, "Hey, I'm a new teacher in the area. I would love to work with your student possibly." If you don't do that, if you don't put the invitation out there, how are people going to know that you exist and
Oh,
that
for
you're
sure.
right?
Right, but it's so scary for some people to have that kind of visibility,
Mm,
to, like, put an offer out there in the world or an invitation out and to, perceive that people see them asking for work, to perceive that people see them putting themselves out in a commercial way, in a mercenary way. And I mean, I remember this mindset
mm,
in my own life. Forever, I ran my read business like completely on the down low. Like I told a few people, and then I just let it grow by word of mouth. I let other people talk about it to other people. And
mm,
it happens that my reads were good and my prices were low, and that growth worked for me for a long time.
mm,
But it was once I thought to myself, "Oh, look, this is an actual business and I don't get upset or judgmental about other businesses that show up in my inbox telling me about the offers they have."
mhm.
Right? Like
Yeah.
maybe the offer is not for me, but I don't hate them for letting me know.
Mhm,
And once I realized that I could advertise, that I could put my business out there, that I could put my offers out there, and not have to worry about blowback, because
mm,
it just didn't come. It just never came.
mm.
If somebody offers you oboe reads and you don't want them, you say no thanks, and then it's over. It's not a
Yeah.
um it's not a
Yeah.
thing that people get judgy about.
Right. And the one tip that I wanna offer here, because I love everything that you're saying, is I hear this too a lot, where musicians are like, "Ooh, I feel sleazy putting out my invitation. I don't like
Mhm.
it. I don't like that
Mhm.
visibility. I don't like putting myself out there because what if they think XYZ?" Well, one, you can't control what they think.
Right.
You can't. But try to lead with serving them in the sense of, if you can find a way to build a relationship first in some capacity before you put out your invite, it feels so much better. It feels more authentic, more genuine. And then when the person receives that invitation, they know you. So they know your heart. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So if you can build a relationship with the band director and say, "Hey, I would love to come to your studio, your band hall, and give a free flute masterclass. I would love to
Mhm.
come and play for your students Super Mario Brothers theme song or Harry
Mhm.
Potter, so that way they can get really excited about the flute."
Yeah.
If you put these people first, and it doesn't have to be much, it could be a 30-minute masterclass. So a lot of
Mhm.
times people say, "Well, I don't have time to talk to somebody for 30 minutes to build that relationship before they ask. I don't have time."
Really though?
Well, yeah,
Really though?
really? Really? Like, how much did you and I talk before our recording today? We wanted to get to know each other. We wanted to feel comfortable with each other. And we had
Mhm.
a lovely conversation for about 30 to 40 minutes last week.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you and I were like, "Oh, yeah,
Oh,
this is going to be good.
exactly.
This is going to
We're
be
gonna be best friends and we're gonna talk and talk.
this is going to be magic." There are 2 episodes here, if not more.
Mhm.
And there's UMBS opportunities and there's TPM opportunities. And already, and I just bought your book. The relationship blossomed and scaled within less than a week's time. Come
Yes.
on. You have time. You have to make time for people because business is people. You have to put people first. And if you
Mhm.
want people enrolling into your products, services, and offerings, then you have to lead with a heart of servitude.
Right, and it's worth yes, lead with a heart of servitude is a beautiful way to put that, and also lead with being a human. I find that there are lots of people. I find that classical musicians, especially, don't like to trot things out in public until they are convinced that it is going to be perfect. By
Mm,
perfect, I mean just like the CD and note perfect, and without uh, error, and like sometimes without strong opinions too, because there's a feeling of, oh, we're not going to, we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want
Mm.
to alarm the donors, we don't want
Mhm.
to um, step too far outside of the path, the
Mm.
basic path that we see other people doing.
Hmm.
um and but allowing yourself to be who you are where you are, allowing yourself to get better as you go along.
Mm.
But I feel like I'm saying six things at once, but my effective overall message is it is worth just getting started and putting yourself out there and having like conversations with people and letting yourself be who you actually are in all of your like messy human not quite perfect yet glory.
Oh, yes. To the umpteenth degree, yes. I was listening back to an episode recording that I had done with my friend Garrett Hope, and he released it, and it's episode 250. If anybody is interested. And I said in that conversation that being messy and being imperfect, there's so much beauty there. And it's
Mm-hmm.
true. It's not going to be perfect because there's no such thing as perfect, right?
Right.
There's just not. So finding the beauty in the messiness is so crucial. And yeah, I loved everything you said.
So good. So how do you feel like your how do you feel like your music making, your own musicianship, and your podcasting skills interact? Like, did it feel to you in any way, like when you started podcasting, this was a whole new animal that you had no idea how to cope with? Or, like, I feel like my question is, how are you thinking about the transferable skills between those two elements of your career and your life?
Oh my goodness. Do we have another hour? Because I am so passionate about this topic. And it's funny because podcasting to me actually felt very natural. And for lack of embarrassing myself, here I go, because I'm a podcaster and I am very vulnerable and everybody knows every aspect of my life. So here we go. My mom would always introduce me as the talker. So there's three of us. There's myself, my brother, and my sister. And she go, you know, hey, so and so, this is my son, Eric. Hey, so and so, this is my daughter, Catherine. Hey, so and so, this is my daughter, the talker. I was never Heidi. So podcasting found me, and I'm so glad it did because really, I just get to be me, and then somebody just put a microphone in front of me, and then I just hit record. So it never felt like to me this other beast that I didn't know how to tame. It was just actually innately in me because I love
Mm.
sharing, I love learning, I love conversation, I love people. And I think when podcasting is done really well, it's that.
Mm.
So the more I actually, and podcasting actually was a godsend because it allowed me to be myself in a very vulnerable, authentic way. And it reminded me of who Heidi was.
Mm.
And I lost that in my music making. I was trying to be somebody else through the flute. I didn't think that I had something to say in the instrument. And I shied away from making music and making a connection with my listener through the music. I had such bad performance anxiety. Anytime I would put my flute to my face, I would shake tremendously. And I thought, I have no place to be here in this ensemble or on this stage. Who am I? I'm not a, glorified flute star. I'm just Heidi. And so I would really shy away. But being in front of a microphone for podcasting reminded me of my uniqueness and my voice and what I have to offer this world. So then when it came to going to the flute, my musical voice, those skills transferred beautifully into the instrument, saying, oh, wow, I remember who I am, and it boosted my confidence to the umpteenth degree where I got to play with music again. I got to have fun with it again. I got to, because, with multiple degrees, and especially at the graduate school, rightfully so, how well can you play your instrument and all this nitpickiness? But
Of
sometimes, at
course.
least for
Yeah.
me, I can't speak for others, but for me, in my perspective and my journey, it was like I got so wrapped up in the details, I forgot why I produced and why I was in the music making business. I forgot the love that I had for it. And so, anyways, podcasting reminded me of that, where I could play with the phrase. How cute could I be? What is the music saying? What is the composer saying? Because that's what we do in podcasting. It's a conversation. So as a flutist,
Yes.
I'm having a conversation with the composer. I'm telling my story and how I interpret the piece to my listener. It goes so hand in hand. It's like this onion, and there's so many layers to it. I could go on forever. How I describe something and how I get excited through my voice. Like, what word am I enunciating? So, what note do I want to really highlight in that phrase that really shines beautifully, that I want to really showcase to the listener? Tone, inflection, dynamics. There are so many possibilities what you can do with the human voice and how it can transfer to your musical voice. I could be here forever.
Oh my gosh. I'm literally right now writing preparing a lecture on exactly that topic, which is not where I assumed you were going to go with that little conversation, but precisely that, right? We are all masters of communicating. We all know exactly how to modulate the tone of our voice, the way we're using like the letters in the words, depending on how angry we are or how in love we are. We know how to use our voices differently to talk to a sleepy infant versus like a drunk uncle. Like we know, and it's absolutely inherent in us. We know how to communicate in that way, and being able to break through the nitpicky of playing an instrument at a high level to just communicate with it
Yes.
is so powerful. Um, another I have another metaphor to go along with that, which I often use when my students are getting like hung up in the nitpicky. And I talk about, have you ever read one of those Victorian novels that are just the Dickens, the Hawthorne, they're so verbose, and you're like slogging through this language. And you're in eighth grade, and you're like, oh my God, when is this book ever going to end? And you're dragging yourself through the language. You almost have to translate it sentence by sentence to yourself. And then suddenly it pops and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute. I recognize this. This author is describing an actual human emotion that I also have had."
Mhm.
And it it really you can really break through the language to see the communication behind it. And
Mm.
similarly, when we're playing Mozart and we're obsessing about like our little feminine endings and the elegance of every single phrase and the arc of each phrase, I talk about, well, you need to sort of put on your powdered wig and
Mm.
put on your gigantic skirt and like put yourself in the costume of this Mozartian style.
Mm.
And once you inhabit that costume,
Mm.
you can say whatever you want to say. You can be a human having an actual human emotion and you can communicate that.
Mm. Yeah, it's storytelling.
It is storytelling.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And
And go ahead. Sorry.
And no, you're fine. I learned a lot from you just then. So thank you for that example. And not just the storytelling with words, with what we are talking about, the enunciation, the tone, the dynamics, the drunk uncle, the baby, all of
Hmm.
that. The silence too.
Oh, yeah.
Being okay with, hey, I need a hot second to think about what I'm going to say. Right?
Yes.
And that's what podcasting has taught me, to be okay in the silence. And, there's a bigger life lesson here. But going back to the music making, really capturing the listener and saying, we are human. I'm going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. But how can we have fun with this? What story are we conveying? What emotions am I conveying? And if there's silence, the listener needs that silence too. They need time to process what's going on. And yeah, it's just this whole package. And I'm getting goosebumps just talking about this with you.
Right, because the music has to breathe, the conversation has to breathe.
Yep.
And I'm a relatively new podcaster. I get anxious and I fill up the space with like talking faster, um, and saying
Yeah.
but that what you just described is actually a really excellent lesson for me too. This is the best conversation, Heidi. I love it.
Oh, thank you. I'm having a lot of fun too. Mm.
I heard you talk about the TPM, the pivoting musician, and I heard you talking about the UMBS. Did I get that combination of letters correct?
You
Um,
did.
there are so many things that you are working on, so many like directions that are important and relevant in as part of your portfolio career.
Mm.
But can you talk just a little bit about sort of the mission behind what you're creating with those programs? And
Mm.
then I think you have something coming up that you'd like to talk about too.
Yeah. So the mission behind all of this is I want to help musicians thrive on and off the stage. So if you're on the stage, I want you to be a confident musician and artistically speak your mind through your instrument so you can find that creative fulfillment. And off the stage, I want you to have a thriving portfolio career that you can be really proud of so you can support yourself as this modern day musician. So whether I am coaching a flutist on flute vibrato or tone, there's elements in that lesson of, hey, how are we going to establish your portfolio career so you have
Hmm.
multiple streams of income coming in and out? And I think the mission kind of boils down to my need as a musician and then seeing other people's needs and seeing how our industry is shifting and pivoting so much that
Hmm.
I'm trying to be a resource for people to help with that pivot. Because what you and I discussed last week in our conversation that could have easily been an episode, what worked for our teachers 40, 50, 60 years ago is not true for us right now. Their climate and their careers and their jobs I mean, we still have some of these traditional jobs out there, yes, but it's shifting so much that I really truly believe, and correct me if you have other views on this, but I really feel that musicians right now need to be thinking more businessly than ever before.
Hmm.
And those skills aren't taught to us, unfortunately, in the music school. In the music school, it's how to play your instrument really well. And thank God for that. Yes,
Hmm.
we need to play in tune. Yes, I need to be able to analyze a score. Yes.
Yes, we need to
But
be awesome musicians. And
yes, we need to be a business person as well,
hmm.
because those traditional jobs of getting that one tenure track flute professor position is
Hmm.
dying away.
Yes.
Getting that one flute principal position
Hmm.
and job in the orchestra is slowly starting to fade away.
Hmm.
Not just the jobs are starting to fade away and they're not even like being posted on the bulletin boards anymore, but the market is overly saturated with highly skilled musicians.
Yes.
A master's degree now is like almost a high school degree. So many musicians have master's
Hmm.
degrees, right?
Hmm.
In the
Hmm.
DFW area alone, if you look at the amount of flute teachers that there are out there, it's not just a lot of flute teachers, but it's a lot of highly skilled flutists,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so we're all trying to, and rightfully so, this is what we're taught because this is what worked for our professors. We're trying to be competitive against each other for that one job that's
Yes.
posted one time a year. No, you're the job. It's not us trying to fight over that 1%. Look at the other 99% of the pie. There are
Hmm.
opportunities all around you. And that's going back to my mission and to my vision to help people have this paradigm shift because I had to have that paradigm shift. I was trying to get into that one door, and
Oh, of
because I
course.
was not
Yep.
right, because
Yeah.
that's what you're told to do, which, I love teaching and I wanted to teach in that traditional sense. But when you look at the statistics and the numbers, it breaks my heart because all of us are trying to knock on that one door and pound it down. The gatekeeper is ruthless. And you think that there's something wrong with you, that you can't get that job.
Yes, that you can't just break through that one last barrier into the job that like will actually take care of you, just like our parents and our teachers had the one job that
Yes.
took care of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just it's not that it doesn't exist, and it's not that the people who win those jobs are wonderful.
Oh,
They're so
yeah.
talented, so highly skilled, so everything, and they're also humans because auditions and application and interview processes for tenure track positions, like, they are no joke, and by the time you get to a final round in any audition or in any interview process, I am guessing, you are sitting there with 5 or 7 or 3 or 10 perfectly qualified,
Yes.
highly qualified individuals, and frankly, plenty of highly qualified individuals were cut in earlier rounds for one reason or another.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
jobs are not as hard to do as they are to win.
Yeah. Exactly. And, it's like, why can't we, instead of, and you're right, these people who win these jobs, hats off to them. That
Mhm.
is amazing. So much endurance and dedication. Yes, kudos. So for the other 99% of us, what do
Mhm.
you do? And I'm advocating, and I want to see this happen sometime in my life. I want people to just start forming their own orchestras. And it doesn't have to be a full out orchestra. What if it's like this like cool, funky little ensemble, percussion, flute, and tuba? You know how many living composers would love to be commissioned for a little group? I mean, that was kind of random, percussion, tuba, and flute. But why can't then the group come together, hire a composer, do a concert series or a residency, a
Mhm.
performance, go around, market it,
Mhm.
sell virtual tickets, sell actual in person concert tickets,
Mhm.
and
Sell
then hire
recordings, sell
recordings?
make
Yeah.
music videos with it.
Yeah.
Um, yes, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
and this is the thing that I learned also, and that my entire book is about basically. Um, once I realized that what I actually wanted in life
Mhm.
were things that I could create for myself
Mm.
instead of things that I had to have that one big job to have.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
I wanted the job. I wanted the job, but what I
Yeah.
actually wanted was a platform
Mm.
to from which to perform, and visibility and credibility in my
Mm.
niche, and I wanted name recognition in my community, and I wanted fantastic colleagues that I loved to work with and that inspired me to greatness, and I wanted a steady income and an income that I could rely on.
Mm.
And frankly, that one big orchestra job didn't show up for me, but I have all of those things. I made all of those things.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm over here. The listeners cannot see this, but I am jumping up and down and I'm like so giddy. And it's because you nailed it right on the head. The things that you're looking for, just because it doesn't fit in those four traditional walls
Mhm.
at a concert hall like Carnegie Hall with this top orchestra, or the four traditional walls at a university, just
Mhm.
because it's not fitting into that traditional sense, doesn't mean that you can't do the things. If you want
Yes.
to teach, go teach. Why do you have to
Yes.
have a search committee say, yes, you can teach here? Teach,
Right. Right. Right.
and if you want to play, go play.
Mhm.
And that's where I was getting frustrated from 2018 to 2020. I was knocking on every traditional door saying, let me in. I
Mhm.
finally got in. I was offered an amazing full time professorship outside of Shanghai, China.
Mhm.
I worked my tail off to get that job, and
Yeah.
I was packed, ready to go. COVID hit. Bye
Mm.
bye, job.
Yeah.
So, what
Yeah.
do? You have to pivot and you've got to adapt and you have to be flexible like ASAP. And my husband, who's my best friend, I'm so glad that he helped me realize this before went on another 2-year journey of more applications. He goes, before you start down that road again, because you did that
Mhm.
from 2018 to 2020,
Yeah.
just take a step back and realize and just think about this for a hot second. You're willing to move to Montana or Iowa or God knows where for an adjunct flute professor position that's going to pay you $800 a month. And of course, I would supplement it with other things, but
Mhm.
that really shook me. It
Yeah.
was a reality check for me. I was like,
Mhm.
huh, you're right. And all the while, as I was waiting for even an adjunct flute professor job, right?
Yep.
Something to open up, I had my family on hold. We
Yes. Oh,
were on a cot in a little studio, and all of our belongings was in a storage bin
yep.
because I was ready to move.
Yep.
All I would have to do is fold up that cot, throw it into the dumpster, grab a suitcase, throw everything from the storage bin, all of our belongings into the storage bin, into a truck. We'd
Mhm.
be able to go right then and there.
Mhm.
For 2 years, I asked my family, and my family is my husband and I, we don't have kids, but I asked my family, my husband to put his life on hold to wait for that job to open up.
Yep.
And when it finally opened up, then I was asking him, hey, let's move halfway across the world to China with our 2 cats. I mean, he's down. He's the most supportive husband ever. But
Mhm.
at the same time, like, when is enough enough? Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I
I know
was,
exactly.
yeah,
Like this is so relatable. This is like the story of my 20s and early 30s. Um, you know, taking auditions and living in teeny apartments and being ready to move at the drop of a hat to
yeah.
wherever, to whichever job in whichever like little Rust Belt city
Yes.
was finally willing to hire me. And then I realized that wasn't what I necessarily wanted, and that I could make a better life for myself, or one that was more perfectly suited to me
Mm.
if I just did it for myself. Oh my god,
Ooh.
Heidi, I could talk to you all day. All day long I could talk to you. You have a the Pivoting Musicians remote class is coming up pretty soon. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. Yes. And I would love to have you be a partner. And thank you so much for giving me a space to talk about this. The Pivoting Musician, our alpha class, or version 2.0, is coming out September 1st. It's a 10-week class, and Garrett and I and other co teachers walk you through your pivot. So you can be successful as a musicpreneur. You can be a successful music boss of your own business. The skills that were not taught to you in school. So we have 5 pillars throughout these 10 weeks, and it's pivot, collaborate, create, market, and enroll. And
Mhm.
during these 10 weeks, we walk you hand in hand. There's a lot of recorded videos that you can purge on your own time. We come into masterminds and have one on one coaching. And it basically takes you from not having any music business skills to, by the end of the 10 weeks, you know how to design your website, you know how to put your creations out into the world, to enroll people into your different products, services, and offerings. So you can be a sustainable business. And that's what we want. That goes back to what you had asked earlier, like, what is your mission? And that's my
Mhm.
mission, is to make musicians realize, like, there are so many opportunities out there, and we want you to be creatively and financially fulfilled.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. This is beautiful. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Heidi. This has been such a treat.
Oh, thank you. And I have been such a fan, and I'm so glad that we are in friendship now together. And I love supporting you, and I want to support you and your listeners in any way possible. If there's anybody who, listened to this episode and thought, "Oh, wow, I want more," or "I want to reach out to Heidi," please do. I don't bite. I promise. And you can go to my website at heidikbegay.com. That's the best and easiest way to reach me. And I hope that I get to start a conversation and build a new relationship with you, the listener, because that's why we're doing this. That's why we have these conversations, is to bring more people into our orbit so that way we can all find that win-win and benefit from each other and make, beautiful collaborations together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe on your app of choice and leave a review too. It really helps us. And don't forget to check out Fonz if your own teaching or service-based business needs better systems, and use the link in the show notes for our special offer. Our theme music was composed by Dream Vance. You can hear his first album, Re-Entry, on Spotify and Apple Music, and follow him there for more innovative synthwave music. You can find me at jennetingle.com, which is also where you can pick up a copy of The Happiest Musician book, reach out to me with thoughts or questions about this podcast, or apply for a possibility session to explore your own portfolio career and thriving musical life. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.